Hello, I'm Esme Murphy, and welcome to Talking Points. I'm talking about homeowners associations. Is your HOA a problem, or do you have residents in your association who are creating problems for everyone else? The state of Minnesota estimates that 25% of Minnesotans live in a homeowners association, and that 82% of new construction is actually homeowner associations. A new bill at the Capitol is moving forward that will result in changes for HOAs. It would add transparency requirements to HOA board meetings and documents, prohibit conflicts of interest for board members and property managers, ban retaliation against unit owners, add maintenance contracts, limit fines, create a process also to terminate the HOA. Just by that list, it's pretty obvious a lot of people are struggling with their HOA, and that's why we have invited an expert, Dana Ohman, who is an attorney who specializes in HOAs. You work with both boards and individuals.
Yes,
so you've seen it for both sides. I didn't realize how prevalent they are. I mean, I knew that a lot of people are in HOAs, but what should people know about going into an HOA if they haven't gone into one already?
If they haven't lived in an HOA before, best thing to do is start before you buy in, because once you're in and you can't opt out. So
right.
Before you get in there, you should be reviewing the governing documents for what kind of rules and regulations they have. You should be reviewing for what assessments look like. Do they have proper reserve funds? Things like that dictate how the association runs.
Right. Well, we'll get into that. Let's start with the reserve funds, because I'm told that is one of the most important things. Should your HOA have a good, solid reserve fund?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's because?
That's because one of the main jobs of the HOA is to maintain the property. So if they are required to maintain, let's say, the roofs, the siding, things like that, the outer exteriors of the buildings are the main things that they maintain. If they're required to maintain those, they need to have the funds to do it. And a reserve fund is for those long-term projects. You shouldn't be replacing your roof every, very often, yeah. But when it does need to be repaired, you want to have the funds available to do that, and that's what a reserve fund is for.
All right, let me ask you, special assessments, what are they, and do you have to pay them?
Yes, you do have to pay them. Special assessments are meant to be for projects that come up, capital improvement projects that come up that are unbudgeted. So it's usually something that is a surprise. It's not meant to be for...
Not a good surprise.
Not a good surprise, no. It's not good for anybody when surprises come up.
But you have to pay them.
But you have to pay them, and that's because the association has to maintain the property. It doesn't have a choice either.
Right.
And so if a project comes up that wasn't in the budget, sometimes a special assessment applies if the funds aren't there.
Right, and it can be water leaking or something completely unexpected.
Right.
Also, are the fees mandatory? Do you have to pay those, the HOA fees?
Yes. Okay. Yes, they are.
All right, and what happens if you don't pay?
That's
probably where you get involved.
That is part of some of what I do. The association has various means to collect assessments if you're not paying them, and it can eventually lead to foreclosure if they're not paid.
So they can actually go through a foreclosure route if it adds up?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have to pay for common areas with your HOA fees, even if you don't use them?
Yes. And that's because even if you're not actively using them, you're allowed to use them. You have a right to use them. And so that access, that open access, is part of your buying into the community, and so you are partially responsible to maintain them and pay the fees to do so.
I've heard that can be the source of arguments too. People say, I don't use the pool, and the pools can be very expensive, that kind of a thing.
Yes, right. That's a good example.
What can an HOA regulate when it comes to the exterior of your building? We're talking color, landscaping, parking, boat parking. What can it regulate?
Most of the things you mentioned, although there may be some changes coming as far as parking is concerned.
And that could be in the new
That
legislation?
could be in the new
Okay.
legislation. But as far as it building exteriors, they usually can dictate anything from, yes, paint color, materials.
So if you've got an off shade of blue, they could actually come and say that's the wrong shade of blue?
They could. The idea with exterior changes is that homeowners should be seeking approval before they go and do those things so that they don't have to redo them later.
Got it. If you have if you're in an HOA and you have a property, can you rent that out?
If the documents allow it, yes. So your association's declaration, if it's going to limit or prohibit leasing, it will say in their declaration, and it would be enforceable. Usually associations have some sort of limitation. Let's say only 25% of the homes maximum can be rented at any given time. Some prohibit.
So you might actually have to figure out how many are rented in your association.
They should have that information readily available, but yes, you should be checking with your HOA first before getting into any lease agreements or anything like that.
Can an HOA kick you out?
No.
Okay. And how does that work? Because you mentioned you can go down the road to foreclosure, but they can't just...
I guess, yeah, in the sense of foreclosure, eventually they could. It happens very, very rarely. That would be the only instance where they could. But in general, if you're not following the rules or things like that, they can't just kick you out. And that's because you're a homeowner. You own the home, you own the property. It is subject to additional requirements, but they don't have the authority to just kick you out.
And can an HOA, what about fines? Can an HOA fine you?
Yes.
Okay, and explain how that works and if that happens often.
Yeah, it works. Let's see, I'm trying to think of an example. If a rule is not followed or broken, they can assess a fine, but there is a very particular process that the HOA has to follow before they can fine you. So they have to give you a written description of what the violation is, how to fix it, and offer you an opportunity to be heard in front of the board. So if you have some kind of explanation of why that happened, maybe they'll be more lenient. There's a whole process that they have to follow before they can get to that point, but they can do that.
And there is legislation moving through the legislature this session. Hasn't gotten through. It's not passed yet as of this taping, but it could be in the next few days, or else it could not be. We never know with the legislature.
It's true.
But what would your job as an attorney, when do you get called in? What are the biggest problems that you see? Because that's what you're there for, is to sort through problems.
Yeah, so problems usually occur for a couple reasons. One, I see where associations maybe haven't followed every step before they find someone, or haven't been as transparent as they could be about what they're working on, what they're doing. And then on the flip side, a lot of homeowners aren't as involved as they could be. They don't attend board meetings. They don't read the meeting minutes if they weren't able to attend. And then when things happen, they get a notification from the association. It feels like a surprise because they haven't been paying attention to what's going on. So I would say communication is...
Would you recommend reading the minutes? I mean, it's kind of dull. Nobody likes to read minutes, but or go to meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be tedious, it can be boring, but being involved is the best way to understand what's going on and be a part of it if you want to know what's going on and have a say, or join the board.
It sounds like this legislation is an attempt to enhance communication between the board and homeowners, and it sounds like that's where a lot of the problems can happen.
Yes, I think that's true. I think that a big point of it is transparency, and I think transparency does help avoid a lot of these interactions that are harder to deal with for both individual owners and boards. And I think if people remember their neighbors, they all live, boards are made up of homeowners who live in the community usually. they have to follow the same rules. They have to pay the same assessments. You know.
All right. Well, Dana Ohman, thank you so much. It's very helpful. We appreciate your insights. That does it for Talking Points. As always, feel free to email me with any questions or comments. That's at esme@wcco.com or esme@cbs.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Esme Murphy, WCCO News.